We got the February one. This is the first program for 2016, and we tried to, like I said, was saying earlier in the discussion, we try and find different technologies of JBoss stack, so we're not just looking at the JBoss, the app server, but all different things. And so I think this talk's going to be kind of interesting. I think it's really going to be interesting, especially from the user experience side. And I think if you've used any Red Hat technology in the last year or so, you're definitely going to see a lot of similarities for, I think, what they're talking about, because you see some of the patterns from there. Next month, I don't have a topic on there, but we'll have it up on our Meetup site. But always looking for suggestions, so feel free, meetup.com, the DC JBook stuff, put your suggestions out there, and we're always looking. So for that, I'm just going to turn it over to the presenters and have at it.
All right, Leslie, Andre, who's going to go first?
Yeah, so I think we're just going to kick it off with some quick introductions first.
All right.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for having us. We are really excited to be here and excited to talk to you about PatternFly. I hope you learned something new. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Leslie Hinson. I am an interaction designer.
Leslie, hang on a second. Is your mic on? Because I am not. I don't think your audio is going out, but mine is. So why not? Your mic must be on because I'm hearing you. So why are we not? Give me just a second. I want to make sure that.
Okay.
You are not muted.
Not muted.
Not muted, but I'm gonna give me a second because I do not see your audio indicating anything. That be the case. Now we're going to unmute you. Hold on here. What's going on? Give me a second. I just want to make sure this is working right, and if it's not, I'm gonna go crazy. Say something now, Leslie. Nope, that's not working either, so we are not.
I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
You can hear me now?
yeah.
Okay, all right. So to tell you something about myself, my name is Leslie Hinson. I am an interaction designer on the Red Hat UXD team. UXD is User Experience Design Team. I'm also the product owner for PatternFly, so I spend a lot of time in Jira and organizing the backlog. I'm sure that there's people out there that can relate to that. But I also am a contributor to PatternFly as well, and I am in the design area. I do maintain the site quite a bit, but my contributions tend to be design patterns or design documentation. And I'll pass it off to my friend and colleague Andres to introduce himself.
Sure. So my name is Andres. I am from Buenos Aires in Argentina. I'm actually here now, and it's pretty hot. I am also a designer, and I code HTML and CSS. I am dedicated to the mobile effort in Red Hat. That means that I dedicate my time to help on the FitHenry and AeroGear communities. And I also contribute to PatternFly. So I think now Les is going to explain a little bit more about PatternFly.
Yeah, so I am going to share my screen now. Let's see here. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes.
Fantastic. So to kick this off, I am going to do an overview of PatternFly, what it is, how you benefit from PatternFly, and sort of give you the high level. And then Andres is going to take over and do a demo, get a little lower level, and show you some Bootstrap basics, as well as put together a dashboard using PatternFly components. So that'll be really cool to see. Towards the end, we'll leave some time for questions, so if there's anything that we didn't cover that you're curious about, more than happy to answer those questions, or if there's any clarifications that we can provide, we're happy to do that. So to kick this off, PatternFly is an open source project. which was started in 2013 by the UXD Red Hat team. And the purpose of the project was to create a standard UI for Red Hat products. We really wanted to make our products work better together. We wanted them to be consistent, and we wanted them to be recognizable. So we're not talking about just a little branded logo in the top left of the screen. If you removed like that sort of branding, we still want to be left with an application that looks, feels, and acts the same way across the portfolio. And so that's what we're currently trying to use PatternFly to serve that purpose. So what is PatternFly and what does it include? We like to use this equation that PatternFly equals or is Bootstrap plus some goodness and extra love. So we chose Bootstrap as the foundation because it is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework. And dev teams at Red Hat, and even outside of Red Hat, were already familiar with Bootstrap, or were even already using it. So it made it easier for adoption if people were already familiar with this technology. Bootstrap also provides a 12-column grid system, which allows any application using PatternFly to be responsive out of the box. The grid has 3 breakpoints that generates 4 views, which you'll actually see this demoed in Andre's demo a little bit later. And then last but not least, Bootstrap's also open source. So that's something that we hold near and dear to our hearts. It absolutely has to be open source, and anything that we use, we want it to be open source. So the heart represents a few things. I said first, it's goodness. So what that goodness is, a custom look and feel. The PatternFly theme is geared specifically towards IT enterprise applications. It has a modern, sleek look and feel. It doesn't have a lot of clutter. Color is used sparingly. We really want the user to be able to focus on the task at hand rather than be distracted by any sort of visual noise. The extra goodness also represents additional components. So Bootstrap as a foundation is fantastic. However, because we're catering towards IT enterprise applications, we need some additional functionality. And I'm not going to name all of the additional components that PatternFly includes, but some examples of that include Bootstrap Tree View, jQuery Data Grid, and C3 and D3 charting. We also include font awesome icons, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, as well as some additional custom PatternFly icons as well. And so to come back to this equation, I said that PatternFly equals Bootstrap plus some goodness and extra love. And that extra love is the UX expertise behind it all. We spend a lot of time on design and development on our team, and we have a community that is accessible via the mailing list or really any of our social media outlets. And so that's something that we think is unique to PatternFly is our community and our dedication to the project. So we also have a Angular flavor of PatternFly, and this is a set of common AngularJS directives for use with the PatternFly reference implementation. When I say reference implementation, that means the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Angular PatternFly was actually initially released back in 2014 by some Red Hat developers outside of the UXD team. They had a need for AngularJS, and so they created it, which is awesome. But since then, our team has been a strong contributor to the repo, and you can definitely check out both of our repos on GitHub. So what does PatternFly offer, and who's it for? We are catering specifically to designers and developers. We we spend a lot of time and energy to try and meet the expectations and the needs of those two different personas. So our design and development resources that we offer are the pattern library with usage guidelines. And for those of you who don't know, a pattern is a solution to a common problem. So in our case, it's specific to the UI. So you know, we're really not solving problems that are niche problems that are very specific only to one application. We're looking for common problems that, you know, to build solutions that can be applied across the portfolio. So we also have the usage guidelines, which I'll talk about this a little bit more in detail to explain what this is. Reference markup, again, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as well as the AngularJS directive. We have established styles, which is colors, icons, and typography, as well as terminology and wording that we deliver. So this would be an example of a pattern, and this is patternfly.org, and this is underneath our patterns section of our website. And this particular pattern is donut chart. And you'll see at the top there is a section called overview. Now, I had mentioned on the previous slide that we have that we elaborate on the usage guidelines of when to use a pattern. Excuse me. So these 3 bullets at the top are identifying 3 use cases in which we have identified when would be a good time to use a donut chart. Further down on the page, you'll see an example. And if you were to scroll down on our page, you would get to this. Now, our process is agile and iterative. So what typically happens is a pattern will go through research, design, and then visuals, and then that will get contributed to our site so that it's like a sneak peek of what's to come for our patterns. But then we also have in that process that there will be code delivered to create that pattern. So once the code is available, that is posted to the site. You can see, if you were on our site, you would see that this example is actually a live example. You would be able to interact with it and see how it behaves, and then also get the reference markup for this example. One gap that I will point out today is that we currently are not delivering the AngularJS code. However, this is something we are looking to do. Sorry, let me repeat myself. We're not delivering the AngularJS code via the website. So you can definitely go to Git to see the Angular, and then we also are hosting examples and code on ng docs. But right now it's a gap that we aren't delivering it via the website. This is something we are looking to address. We are working on designs and putting it in the backlog to have development make this available via the website as well, so that it just gives you a more complete picture of, you know, what type of code we have for what examples. So now I'm in the styles section of PatternFly. I mentioned these a little bit earlier. So this is the color palette page, and I will say that there are additional colors underneath this fold, so if you were on this page you could actually scroll. But these are colors that we have defined and that are reused throughout our designs. We stick to our color palette. We make it available to you to use. They work together. It's a nice set. However, I will say PatternFly is customizable, so you know, if you needed some other sort of theme, then you would be able to adjust that. This is our icons cheat sheet, and this is available on our website as well. I mentioned earlier that we are using Font Awesome icons. We have gone through and sort of like cherry-picked what we would recommend to use out of Font Awesome. We didn't just dump all of the icons into PatternFly. We definitely went through and went through what we thought would be applicable for IT enterprise applications. But similar to Bootstrap, Font Awesome is a great foundation and a great start. However, because we are catering towards IT enterprise applications, we have additional requirements that need to be met. So we have custom PatternFly icons, which are shown on the left, that we also provide for use to meet those specific needs. We also have typography that's defined, very similar to the color palettes. You'll see this as a constant theme and thread throughout our designs. We stick to the typography that's defined, however, it is customizable. And then terminology and wording. This is an interesting one. It's a pretty new effort. I would say it's probably a year old. It's not a huge, extensive guideline as of now. However, it's something that we find to be really important and something that we want to continue to grow. If we have any editors or writers out there that are interested in contributing to PatternFly in this way, we would love to have assistance in this area, because we would like to see it grow. But basically, terminology and wording is just a place that defines some guidelines on how to say something, or defining some standards. You know, we think it's important to be consistent about the UI in both behavior and look and feel, but I also think it's we also think it's important to be consistent in how we're saying things and have a common language that we're using. So that is what PatternFly offers, and now I'm going to speak a little bit to the benefits of PatternFly. So there's three main points that I wanted to hit on about PatternFly, and that it improves consistency, increases usability, and reduces cost and time to market. And I'm going to speak a little more in detail about each one of these things in the next few slides. So in this comic, this is Ralph, and in this it says Ralph is doing a preliminary study of reinventing the wheel. And I thought this comic was so perfect because in the past, development teams have been tasked with creating solutions specific to their application needs. Teams usually followed a decision path that was best for their community, and really there's nothing wrong with this on a small scale, but it does present a problem when you're looking at it at a larger scale. Teams keep trying to reinvent the wheel, making solutions that fit their project needs but don't get applied across the portfolio. So, for example, a wheel created by a team might be functional and successful in its own right. A team might decide to go with a robust solution, such as a truck wheel. They might go with a cutting-edge solution, such as a Ferrari wheel. The conservative ones might pick a Volvo wheel. And then we have our eco-friendly gals and guys who might go with the bike wheel. But if you install these 4 different wheels with varying sizes and attributes, it would have a negative impact on how that car drives. Individually, the solutions are great. Collectively, not so much. So we need solutions that all work together, and PatternFly is aiming to do that. So the next point was increased usability. And this is because users are familiar with interactions and the way things should work. So for our applications, it's important for a user to be able to migrate seamlessly from one product to another without having to relearn to drive the UI. So I'm going to stay with the car theme and the analogy. And in this example, between my husband and I, we both have 2 cars. And we have a 1-car driveway. And we live close to downtown, and so we can't park on the street either. So at any given time, one of us is always behind the other. And full disclosure, this is not my house. These are not my cars. I'm just totally lazy and decided to Google search for an image rather than walk outside and take a picture. But this serves the purposes of the analogy. So we have to coordinate with each other of, okay, I'm going to park behind you because I'm going to leave first, and it's this whole like song and dance that we have to do. But what happens more often than not is the first person who leaves just takes the car that's behind. So how annoying would it be if the components of a car were not consistent? If I jumped in his car and the brake and the gas pedal were switched, that would be a huge problem. Similarly, consistency across a portfolio leads to better usability because users are familiar with the interactions. I know that when I get into either one of those cars, that the brake will be either on the brake will be on the left and the gas pedal will be on the right. It's completely intuitive. I don't have to give it any thought. We are trying to do the same thing with UIs. Don't make people think when they do not have to. And the last point that I'm going to touch on is reduce cost and time to market. And that's because you're picking up solutions rather than having to create them. So in this comic, the mother is scolding the child on the left. And she's saying, all you've done is chisel all day. Do something useful like helping your brother drag these rocks up the hill. So PatternFly is that little boy on the left. We are painstakingly thinking through all the various use cases and requirements and spend a lot of time in design, on design and development in making that wheel for you. Here you go, it's free and it's open source. And for this particular analogy, I know that I would be thanking the heavens above because I'm not particularly interested in cars, even though I've used a bunch of car analogies. I don't want to research tires and wheels. If someone's going to tell me, here's a solution, you bet you, I'm just going to take it and say, thank you. Anyways, the point is, PatternFly helps to decrease design and development time for things which can be reused. And it allows more time on domain-specific features and flows. So don't be that little boy that's dragging the rocks up the hill. So with that, that was an overview of PatternFly. And without further ado, I'm actually going to hand it over to Andres to dive in and give us a demo of PatternFly.
Thank you. So can I share my screen now?
Yeah, if I can figure out how to stop sharing.
That's right.
There we go.
Okay, I will share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. So as I told you before, I work with the Feed Henry guys, the Feed Henry community, which is a product that Red Hat acquired last year. And it was a startup that grew without a UI plan. So when it got into my hands, it had this dashboard, which is more like a series of links instead of a dashboard, and it doesn't belong to the rest of the Red Hat products. So my goal as a team designer was to improve the usability and keep it consistent with the rest of the Red Hat products. And this is the result. And this dashboard follows PatternFly styles and patterns. And I'm actually going to show you exactly how I built it. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a demo and show you how to set up Bootstrap and how to use Bootstrap, which is the base to use PatternFly. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create an index.html file and open it on my text editor. Here, I'm going to create an HTML5 structure. Let me bump up the font size, which has a head.
Jump back to your, Andre, we're back on your camera view if you're trying to show your desktop or a window.
Oh, really? Well, let me then do this.
And what you see in your icon is what's being streamed out. So if you see your face in the icon, that's what people are seeing.
I see. Okay.
Which may be what you intended, and this could just be that.
No, let me just change. I switched screens, so it had that. So yeah, let me share it again. Cool. Do you see my screen now?
Yes. Now we see the window.
Okay. So on my text editor, I've created an HTML5 structure which has a head and a body. As you know, the head is where we give information to the browser, and the body is where we pass information that we want the browser to show. So the easiest way to use Bootstrap is by using Bootstrap CDN, which will get us 3 files. The first one is bootstrap.css, which has all Bootstrap styles. Then jQuery, which is a dependency to use Bootstrap, and bootstrap.js, which has all Bootstrap behaviors. And this file is ready to put any Bootstrap component. I could just go and grab any snippet from the documentation and paste it here, and it will just work. But one of the most interesting things Bootstrap has is its grid system. Now, as Leslie mentioned before, Bootstrap has a 12-column grid system with a 30-pixel gutter between each column. And to define it, I'll generate a div which has a class of container to contain my grid system. Then I define a row for each row I want to render. And then I create a column for each column I want to create. In this case, I have 3 columns that spans 4 spaces each, and that makes the 12 spaces available that the grid system has. So if I open this file, let me open it on, let's say, yep. So if I open it on Chrome, for example, I can see that I have my 3 columns, and each one spans 4 spaces. Now, Bootstrap grid system is responsive, and it has 3 breakpoints, which generates for views. So it has an extra small view for extra small devices, like mobile phones, a small view for small devices like tablets, a medium breakpoint for medium devices like like laptops, and a large one for large devices like desktops. And to define it, I can go to my columns and, for example, make it 12 spaces for extra small size. Then let's make it 6 for small. Then let's give it 4 for medium. And for large, let's make it 6. Now, let me copy this in the rest of the columns. Just make it 3 on large. And I'm going to change this for 12. So if I preview this on the browser, I'll see how on large screens I get 6, 3, and 3. On medium-sized screens, I get 4, 4, and 4. On small sizes, I get 6, 6, and 12. And on mobile devices, I just get 1 column on top of the other, which is 12, 12, and 12. Now, Bootstrap 4, which has an alpha release now, has an extra large breakpoint. So it adds an additional viewpoint. But this is Bootstrap 3, so it has only 3 breakpoints. Now, Bootstrap is based on BEM. And the way we organize our code is key for the efficiency. And not only for the amount of code we write, but also for the speed the browser takes to load. So as I told you, Bootstrap uses something like BEM, which is the block element modifier methodology, but it actually changes a little bit. So for example, if I want to render a button here, I can just use a bottom tag. I could use an anchor or a div or whatever, but in this case, I'm using a bottom. And I can choose the bottom class, which is the block class, and then I can add as many modifiers as I want. For example, bottom small, we will make it small. Bottom primary will make it the primary color, which by default is blue. And bottom block will make it expand to the whole width of the row of the parent element. So like under the hood, what it's doing is just displaying it block. So I can copy this bottom in the rest of my columns. And if I preview it, I can see I have my bottoms here. And I can also change the modifiers. For example, I can change this one to be a large button, and instead of primary color, I can make it danger will be red. So if I refresh here, I get a large red button. So now that we know how the grid system works, what if I want to overwrite it, actually customize it, and change the styles? So I can override the styles by using CSS. So for example, I can change the background color of the bottom to, let's say, pink, and I can change the font size of the paragraph to 12 pixels. And if I refresh this, it will just work. But you can see that the font size didn't decrease proportionally for the titles, and I still have a different color border on my buttons. And if I keep on overwriting Bootstrap, which is a huge framework with lots of CSS, I will end up having specificity problems and having to put important after every single declaration. And this is just a nightmare. So the way we do it is to overwrite Bootstrap instead of actually, extend Bootstrap instead of overwriting it. And to do so, I'm going to use less. Now, less is a CSS preprocessor that extends the CSS language with functions, variables, mixins, and many other things. There are other CSS preprocessors like Sass and Stylus, but I'm going to use less because Bootstrap originally was made over less. Now, Bootstrap 4 is made over Sass because Sass got super popular lately, but these examples are going to be done over less. And to do so, I'm going to install Bootstrap locally. And to do so, I can do it with Bower, with npm, with Composer, or just forking the GitHub repo or downloading the files. In this case, I'm going to use Bower. So Bower install Bootstrap will generate a folder called Bower Components. And if I cd into Bower Components, I can see that I have Bootstrap and jQuery, which is a dependency. So if I cd into Bootstrap, I can see that I have a folder called less. And if I cd into less, I can see all the styles that defines every single component of Bootstrap. For example, navbar.less defines the navigation bar. Now, there are two files which are interesting. The first one is variables. So if I open variables.less, I will see all the variables that defines the colors, sizes, spacing, and typography for Bootstrap. For example, brand primary is a shade of blue, which if I change it here, I will just change the whole Bootstrap theme. And also, for example, font size base is set to 14 pixels. And since every single font size on Bootstrap is based on font size base, if I change this, everything will change in proportion. This is also the file where I find my grid system definitions and settings. So if I change it here, like from 12 to whatever I want, or from 30 pixels gutter to a larger gutter, I will change the grid system. I don't recommend doing it because 12 seems to be the magic number, since it can be divided by 4 and by 3. Now, the other file I want to show you is bootstrap.less. And here is where Bootstrap imports every single bit of styling. And when I compile this file into a CSS file, I get the same file I'm using with the CDN. Now, I'm going to use Bootstrap as a dependency. So I'm going back a few, here. I'm going to create a directory called less. And inside that directory, I'm going to create a file called styles.less. Styles.less. So I'm going to open this file on my text editor and import Bootstrap. So here I'm importing bootstrap.less, and since bootstrap.less imports every single style from Bootstrap, I'm getting all my styles here. But I'm keeping Bower components pristine. I'm not changing that. So if Bootstrap gets an upgrade, I can easily upgrade with Bower, and I have my styles separate. Now, I can't consume a less file because a browser will not know how to read a less file. That's why I need to transform it or compile it into a CSS file. And to do so, I'm going to use less CLI tool, which you can install with npm. So npm install less will get you this. And it works by typing or running less C for less compile, then selecting the origin where the file is, and then the place you want to put it. So in this case, css/styles.css. So this will compile my file and generate a CSS file. So if I go back to my index, I can change from the CDN to my local file. If I save this and delete my styles here and refresh the page, I will see that I have the exact same results I had before. But this setup is ready to extend Bootstrap instead of overwriting it. So if I go back to my styles, styles.less, and change, for example, brand primary to, let's make it hot pink, and I'm going also to change brand danger to blue, for example. Then I go back to my terminal and compile it again. Then I go back to my browser, refresh the page, and I see the changes there. And I can change anything like that. But changing something, then compiling, and then doing a refresh on the browser, it's pretty tedious, and it's unpractical when you are working on a developer environment. And that's why we use task runners. So task runners are things that allow us to make repetitive tasks, for example, compiling, linting, minifying, or things like that. The most common ones are grunt, gulp, and broccoli. For this project, I'm going to use gulp. And I have already installed in my project gulp less to compile less into CSS, gulp Plumber to detect errors on the pipe, gulp, uglify to minify JavaScript, and browser sync for super fast browser fresh reload. And I did that with npm. And I also have a gulp file here I'm going to show you. In this gulp file, I first require all my plugins. Then I minify any JavaScript that is inside the JavaScript folder. Then I transform from less to CSS any file that is inside the less folder. Then I start a browser sync server, and then I have a watch. So whenever there is a change on the JavaScript, HTML, or less, I have the server to refresh my browser. And to run it, I type gulp, then it will start browser sync. And now I can just change this, for example, to green, and there it is. It's just super fast. Or for example, this to pink. Or I can actually change the font size base to, let's say, 12 pixels. Now it's smaller, or let's bump it to 20 pixels, and now it's huge, right? So this is much easier to work on. Now, Bootstrap is responsive, but it's also mobile first. And mobile first is a design philosophy that prioritizes the mobile environments before others. So in code, it means that we give styles for smaller screens first, and then we enhance it for larger ones. So for example, I can use Bootstrap responsive mixing to set the background to red on extra small sizes. And then for small sizes, I can change it to tan. Then for medium ones, I can change it to aqua. And then for large ones, I can change it to blue, right? So if I go back to my browser, I can see how the color changes as I change the viewport. But remember, this is mobile first. So if, for example, I don't set up any color for small and for large, I get the same color for extra small, and it will only change on medium and have the same color for medium or large. Cool. So now you have a pretty good idea of how Bootstrap works and how we can customize it and change it. And this is exactly how we build PatternFly. We took Bootstrap, extended, added a bunch more styles on top of it, changed the variables, and add additional components to extend the functionalities of Bootstrap for our needs, right? So I'm going to show you a little bit of how I build the dashboard I showed you before. So first, let me kill this. So the first thing I want to do is to install PatternFly. And you can install PatternFly with npm, bower, or just forking the repo or downloading the files from GitHub. Now, if you do it with bower or npm, you will get all the dependencies, so I recommend going that way. So in this case, I'm going to use Bootstrap install PatternFly. That will just give me, I'm going to show you, I have it already installed here. So I have the bower components folder here, and I have PatternFly here with all the dependencies that we use on PatternFly. Now, inside PatternFly, there is a folder called tests, and there is where we keep examples of all our components. And if you open that file on a browser, you will see something like this. So here are all the widgets and layouts you have available on PatternFly. And now, for example, navigation bar is one of them, and this is the PatternFly navigation bar. which has a lot of options. For primary navigation, then there is a contextual selector, there is multi-level with drop menus, and if I scroll down, I have like a secondary and tertiary menus with even drop downs and even putting all together with contextual selectors and secondary navigation and everything. For the project I'm building, I'm only going to use the simplest one, which is this one here, so just a primary navigation. So for this project, I have the same setup, so I'm going to run gulp to launch a browser sync, and I have an empty screen. And oops, where is my? Did I stop sharing?
No, we still see you.
Okay, perfect. So I have open here on the right my styles.less file, which is the same setup I had before. I'm consuming PatternFly as a dependency, and on the left I have an HTML5 structure with the body and the head. In this case, I'm using cards PatternFly, which is a component from PatternFly. Now I'm going to use a lot of snippets. I'm going to tell you that every single snippet I'm using is just copy and paste from the PatternFly documentation. So they might look like very large, but they are just like instead of copying and pasting, I just created a bunch of snippets to make this easier for me to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create the navigation bar I told you about. So this is the navigation bar, which is based on the Bootstrap navigation bar, and then we added a modifier to make it the PatternFly navigation bar, and it looks like this. So I have a primary navigation bar with some other options up here. Now I'm going to create a basic structure for my website, and I'm going to use Bootstrap grid system for that. So in this case, I generate a container. In this case, it's a fluid container, which is a modifier for the container that makes it 100% width and fluid instead of having the breakpoints. And I'm defining a row with two columns. One is a main column, and the other one is a sidebar. Now, FeedHenry has 4 different users. It has a DevOps, who will want to see the status of the servers, a developer who will want to see a list of projects, a CIO or a business person that will want to see analytics, and a manager that will want to see a list of events where he can see who is doing what at what time, right? So to start with, for the DevOps, I'm going to use the component called aggregated status card. And this is basically a bunch of panels with work inside cards. And it looks like this. So I'm using some of our custom-made icons here, and then icons to show if the servers are running okay, if they have a problem, or if there is a warning they should look at. Now, for this sidebar, for the manager, I'm going to use a media list. So in this case, this media list has a list group here where I have a title, a description, and an icon for each event. Now, the managers, the CIOs or business person will want to see analytics. And Bootstrap by default doesn't have any charting library. So on PatternFly, we added C3 charts, which are based on D3 data visualization library, which is excellent, and they render SVGs. So I'm going to create these charts here. So again, the row with the columns and 2 cards to show the charts. In this case, a bar chart and a donut chart. These are out of the box C3 charts. We also have some custom-made like tweaked styles for PatternFly, but I haven't included them here. And now we have our developers. And the developers, we want to see a list of projects. Now, at the time I built this dashboard, there wasn't the list of projects on PatternFly. So I talked with the community and asked them to build it. But building a component takes time because first we research use cases, then we build wireframes, and we do iterations until we do visual design, and then we code it. So in the meantime, since my project was using PatternFly as a dependency, I can create something out of Bootstrap. Now, Bootstrap has this component, which is called media object. And media object kind of fit my needs because I needed a list of projects, and I thought, okay, maybe this heading can be the title of the project, then I have a description, and then on the avatar, I can put the first letter of the name of the project. So I just use a snippet from, where is it? Here. So I just use, again, a row with a card, and I have the media list, which has each media component or each media block. And it kind of looks okay, but it isn't perfect yet. So I've added a bunch of styles to make it look better with PatternFly. So it isn't that much. It's just like 70 lines of CSS, which overrides or extends Bootstrap default to make it look more like PatternFly. And it looks like this. And this is okay, but it wasn't tested, it wasn't researched, it's just something I put together for this project. So by the time I was finishing this, the PatternFly team came up with a new component, which is called list view. And I'm sure that list view will work better than this because list view was tested and it was researched, and the code is actually cleaner and better than mine. So I can now, since I'm using Bootstrap as a dependency, I can now upgrade Bootstrap with Bower, just Bower install or upgrade Bootstrap. And I can now delete my component here and use the list view component. So I can also delete my extra styles. I don't need them anymore. And this is how it looks. Now, you might argue that this looks different than what I had before, but at least I'm sure that this works better because this was tested. So since PatternFly is based on Bootstrap, PatternFly is also mobile first and responsive. That means that I can shrink this dashboard, and I will still have a good look and feel for all the components. Now, what if I want to actually customize Bootstrap? Maybe you want to use it on your project and you don't want to use these colors. We do this at Red Hat. So PatternFly is used for upstream projects, which are community projects. But when we use it on our products, we change PatternFly look and feel. And we call it RQ, which is a Red Hat Common User Experience. So RQ is just changing a few variables on the login page and the navigation bar. So we have a different color and a different look and feel. So I can load RQ specific variables, and I can change the name of the project here to here to my project name. So this is it. And if I go here, now I have a softer gray with a red line on top. And it reads like Red Hat Mobile Application Platform, which is the name of the project. Now, PatternFly comes in 3 flavors. It has a less version, a SAS version, and an Angular version with Angular directives. And you can choose whatever flavor you like. It's all based on the same patterns. So this is all I had to show you. But I would like to add that you can contact us on our IRC channel, which is PatternFly on Freenode. We always hang out there, like if you have questions or if you want to implement this or whatever, we're always there. And there is the community mailing list, which is patternfly@redhat.com, and we are always happy to help whoever writes and whoever needs to use PatternFly. And I think now that there is a few minutes for Q&A, so thank you very much.
All right, that was pretty interesting. Actually, I was surprised how easily you were able to do some of the changes and inserts in the PatternFly. It's something I hadn't seen done that way before.
Cool, thank you.
I had a couple of questions, but what about you all? Anything that you wanted to ask right now, Isaac or?
Yeah, I'm curious to know whether the Bootstrap or PatternFly or whatever we are using, are they already tested on 508 compliance side as well or not?
On what compliance?
508.
Oh, 508.
On which component?
Yeah, so can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 508 compliance, we, PatternFly, do not say we are 508 compliant. We are looking to see the ways we can be 508 compliant and identify that somewhere on our website so that people are aware of how we're addressing that. But at this time, we do not say we are 508 compliant.
I had one question that's kind of off a tangent, but it occurs to me just a while ago, and that is I like to experiment and do some augmented virtual reality type applications. And it occurs to me that VR is likely going to become a greater and greater influence in terms of display technology, and the implication of that is kind of interesting because if you look at the form factors of phone, tablet, desktop, they are roughly similar sizes, or I mean predictable sizes, but assume that you step into the future and you start looking at virtual reality and you start having applications or sites that support virtual reality, which implies that a person could look around conceivably 360 degrees, and it's something to think about in terms of the future because I don't think I've seen that discussed anywhere in terms of styling and user experience. Each one of the VR experiences I've seen so far have been very customized to whatever that specifically is. So it's just something to kind of conjecture about in terms of the long run. That eventually what you may see is a display size that's spherical, 360 degrees in effect. And what would that mean in terms of how we begin to develop support for it and those sorts of things. So anyway, like I said, it's just sort of a tangent, but it's still related. If you project in the future, I'm certain that will be an eventual outcome.
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So first of all, we cater for enterprise IT application, so they usually don't have VR abilities for that. But other than that, I'm super interested in VR and ways to do that. I know that the WC3 CSS working group is looking for radial positioning for example, watches with radial screens and things like that for CSS. And I guess that the logical next step is to go 360, right? So how to do CSS in a 360 environment. There aren't any variables yet for that, but I'm sure that is on the roadmap of the CSS working group on the WC3.
Yeah, that may be. It hadn't even occurred to me to think of it from that perspective until just while I was watching PatternFly and making your demonstration and you're talking about it, that it suddenly struck me that you could actually get into a world where somebody could spin around and your edges have to touch, which is kind of an interesting thing to think of from the UI perspective, developing for that.
Yeah, I guess that's something that I wanted to discuss with the PatternFly community is eventually having like a lab for us to play and like a playground for us to see like what's going to happen like in like 10 years or whatever, and then build things for that, right? But at the moment we don't have the bandwidth to do that yet. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So just out of general curiosity, you said you're working with the Feed Henry team as well?
Yes.
So how are you leveraging PatternFly for that, or are you?
So we are going to make it PatternFly. I'm working on it. It's not in the near future, probably. We have like more priorities, like having the on-premise product out. But I mean, we are still researching and seeing how to move something like Feed Henry to PatternFly, because it's not just like change it to PatternFly styles. It's just we need to improve the user experience. So we first do a user research with where we interview users and see what's the behavior. Then we draw a new map to get people to use Feed Henry better, and then we finally design and make visuals and improve the code. So I guess that before that happens, a lot of things are going to happen with Feed Henry. I've already started working on the UI and working on research and other stuff, but the plans for this year are the on-premise product and probably open sourcing most of Feed Henry.
And with that, and so certainly the sort of enterprise, sort of the dashboards elements I could see for PatternFly, I can see where that would fit in. How would that work for sort of consumer? Would there be a way use for it for consumer-specific mobile application patterns?
Well, Feed Henry doesn't have a mobile dashboard. It's it's to like manage mobile applications, but you manage them. You don't create them. They are. So PatternFly is not for. It's responsive, but it's not target to mobile.
So that makes sense. So you want to use it for generating the mobile applications. You would just use it for that enterprise dashboard. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about the integration of PatternFly into other things? And specifically, what I'm always interested in, the JBoss admin console. I would certainly like to see that be smoother.
So when you say JBoss admin console, which one?
The main admin console, meaning I go in and I start looking at switchyard, I start looking at other things, and it doesn't page well, it doesn't scroll at all, etc. Those sorts of things.
So that's probably a good question. What products is PatternFly influencing for the JBoss stack today?
So on JBoss, I think BRMS or BXMS, all of them, they are PatternFly. They are on the way to get into PatternFly. Some parts are, some parts aren't yet. Leslie, do you know of any other that is already on PatternFly?
Unfortunately, from the JBoss stack, I'm not as familiar.
So
I know
there is
OpenShift.
Yeah. Then there is Hocular, which is the new open source community. It's using already PatternFly. Yep.
Okay, so how do I go with that? So as extension Fuse and all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I was just thinking the EAP.
Yeah, so the EAP piece is not there, but I think the other products are. Cool.
Andres, did you mention BXMS?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I know that was just recently migrated to PatternFly, so that was a big victory.
BPM should also be using PatternFly.
Yeah, I can definitely see its influence. Like, I think you guys, as far as the Red Hat stack too, Red Hat Satellite. And
yeah.
I think Rev was moving that direction too, right? Red Hat virtualization.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I guess that the next step is to go outside Red Hat specific. Like PatternFly is good to any IT web application. So we know some people are trying or are starting to using it outside Red Hat. So that's the goal for the community and to be in open source.
Cool.
Anything else? Anybody else can think of?
So no, this is cool. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said, you guys, would you say only really 2014, and we just listed a whole bunch of Red Hat products that you guys are influencing in a short period of time. So it's definitely very cool.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly appreciate all the time and effort y'all put into this, and it was quite interesting, and not having known anything about PatternFly previously, I'm really quite interested in them, because some of the basic bootstrap I've done, I've been wanting to improve a couple of things, and I think PatternFly is a good thing for me to start with on that. So, all right, that being said, we will keep in touch with y'all, and we appreciate everything that you did for us.
Thanks for you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.